in your documentary, Breaking into Bollywood, you described both India and America as your homes. Could you share like what elements of Mumbai, India, resonate with you deeply and evoke that sense of home?
Uh, yeah, sure. I mean, it's a funny thing because I don't think it's all that different than most migrants. So you have kind of like you have a migrant aspect, you have an Indian aspect, and then you have something personal to me, the Zach aspect. But the migrant, I think, is I think I share with everybody forever, which is that your NRI relatives who've left India and have gone to Uganda or to Canada or to America or wherever they've gone. You ask them, is that home? Well, if they've made that their home, then they're going to say that's home, but they're not going to say India is not their home. So there's a kind of contradiction, but Indians understand this in particular. But it's just a migratory thing where the first generation that moves, and I am an immigrant here, but the first generation that moves, you bring something, but you make it your home also. So it may seem like a contradiction, but it's not. It's not any different than any other migrant. The one thing that has changed is that for all of human history, migration was mostly one way. Like Irish people had a famine in the 1800s, and so they left Ireland in droves and went to America. There's 40 million Irish Americans and only 10 million Irish people in Ireland. There's more Irish people in America than in Ireland. And they're very proud Irish Americans, but they would never say that they're not Americans. They're Americans. It's their home. It's what they do. But the root, the connection to Ireland is still there. So through most of history, it was one way. Maybe you, like your grandchildren, the second generation, you would say, oh, come back and see your grandparents. You on a vacation, you come back and you visit your ancestral village, something like that, and then you go back to your home. What's changed a lot is people go back and forth. And so it is actually possible to be a global citizen in some sense, where I live here and then I also live there, and maybe I travel here, and perhaps there's a lot more people, and sometimes they're global nomads. So the migration thing is common for all of us. But then there's India, and India is a little bit different than every other country. And one thing which I've seen, which is that everywhere I look around India, I of course see things that are very Indian, but I see glimpses of human history, world history. Meaning, and Mumbai is a great example of this. If you take something like architecture, I go down one street and I see Portuguese architecture, and I turn over here and I see the British, and I see something like, even something which is become very Indian, like I don't know, aloo sabzi. Potato is not from India. Potato came from abroad and became Indian. And if you look at Indian history, it's an amazing thing because it's a repository for anything that has ever come here. A Jewish synagogue in Kerala, African slave who becomes kind of a lord in Madhya Pradesh. Alexander the Greek gets to the northwest frontier. He brings doctors with him. The Greek doctors have a medicine called Unani. Nobody practices Unani in the world now. It's over 2,000 years old, except India. Greece and India. So if something comes to India once, it has a place here in India. It stays in India forever. Not like a museum, but kind of like a living thing. It's very, the Communist Party is gone from Soviet Union, but it's still alive in India, right? So when a foreigner comes to India, they often have something, I know you guys have heard this, it feels familiar. And I'm telling you, many times people will say, oh, that means Zach is reincarnated. He's coming back to India. He had a past life in India. And I don't know, maybe it's true, maybe who knows. But it's also because India is not just diverse regionally. India is diverse historically. Like all of human history, there's elements of it here, right? There's Chinese ships in Cochin. You know what I'm saying? There's amazing, staggering amount of diversity here. And so you can always find something that you connect to in India. It has its place. And that's not like other countries. I can be a migrant like Ireland and America, but I would never say that all of Irish history exists in America. America is much more than that. But India has a special thing. And then there's the Zach factor, which is simply I don't know. I've made it my home, but I'm an American. But I made it my home, but I'm an American. But I can't become a citizen. It's actually very difficult to become a citizen in India. Even if I married somebody here, you don't become a citizen. It's a very interesting thing. Most countries, if you marry, you can become an American citizen by marriage and kind of the naturalization. I can become naturalized and get a lifetime visa, but I don't become a citizen. So it's a very interesting thing. The Indian idea of his citizenship is very much grounded to you were born here and you're from the land and you are Indic. Now, I can get a lifetime visa here, and I've been readily accepted and welcomed by Indian culture, which is great. But it's a funny thing because I'll always have an American passport. I can live in India for 50 years and I'll still have an American passport. So it's a weird thing in that sense. But the people who understand this it's a contradiction. But Indians understand that contradiction also. So this doesn't actually work like it does in any other country. India is different.